let's embrace as coaches, as leaders, as mentors, that coaching isn't just about our way of learning. It's also about our people's way, their way. Leaders find ways to improve how they coach, not just what they coach. What do I mean about this? Leaders are chameleons. They will always find a way to make sure that when their people need to listen, they are engaged to listen. And when people need to learn, they learn based on their learning preferences. So, for example, let's ask this question. When learning a new skill, which one works for you best? Could you please type? Letter A, I learn best by reading a manual or listening to someone. Letter B, by watching videos or looking at an infographic. Letter C, by doing it myself, make a mistake, and then repeat it. So no right or wrong. I see a lot of very different answers here. We have letter C, we have some letter B, we have some letter A. Okay? If I were to choose, my answer will be I'm a millennial, so I'm letter B. I love visual. I'm into visual learning. I cannot stand listening to a boring 1-hour town hall meeting, and yet you cannot even present a single slide. Because if you're going to speak like that, it will feel like you're a priest doing a 1-hour sermon, right? Repeating the same things over and over again, for example, right? The same thing also happens with us. For us to manage quarantine fatigue, and when I say quarantine fatigue, remember, before you even engage in a Zoom meeting, likely that person already had a Zoom meeting this morning, had a Zoom meeting yesterday, had a Zoom meeting last week. We've had so many Zoom marathons, Microsoft Teams marathons since the pandemic started. So in order for you to catch the attention, you have to hustle harder. You have to differentiate yourselves versus the rest. When coaching people, let's acknowledge that people have different learning styles. Some people are auditory learners. They learn best on phone calls, by listening to lectures, conversations, or podcasts. Some people are visual learners. I fall under that category. I will only learn best if there is a video, if there's a presentation, if there's an infographic. And some people learn better if there is a case simulation, right? We call them as kinesthetic learners. So kinesthetic learning meaning learning by doing. I'll give an example. We do a lot of workshops and training sessions for insurance companies. So visual learning is when you talk to a customer and you tell the customer, Mr. Yabut, Mr. Jonathan, so here are currently the perks of what you will get if you sign up to this insurance policy. And you put some icons, you put some different colors, different photos, etc. Kinesthetic learning is when you say, Mr. Yabut, for you to appreciate how much will you benefit, I created for you a 30-year plan of how much you're going to be investing and how much you will get in the end of the terminal insurance, whatever it is, right? So kinesthetic is people will only appreciate if they understand how it relates to their lives, right? Another example of kinesthetic learning is some people learn better if they watch it. Some people learn better if they do it themselves, right? So learning by watching and applying also the demo. Could you please type in the chat box, which one applies for you the best? Letter A, are you an auditory learner? Letter V, are you a visual learner? Or letter K, are you a kinesthetic learner? Okay? So most of the time in my webinars, I have a mixed, and I also have a lot of millennials. So I often do a lot of visual learning. But I'll give you a quick story. I remember there was one time I did a webinar, and this was way back in 2020 when webinars were still starting out. I did a webinar for a lot of Generation X, mostly latter 40s to 50s, for a group of European marketers. So all of them were from Europe, mostly from West Europe. And so I tried doing that tactic wherein I asked them, give me an exclamation mark, type letter A, letter B, or letter C. And halfway through the session, no one was typing anything. Right? Can I get an exclamation mark if you can relate how I was so scared when people were not doing anything in the chat box? I'm sure you would, right? And then I realized later on, yeah, I was imposing my learning style to these guys. Because most of these Gen X folks are auditory learners. For them, they want a straightforward webinar. You deliver to me the talk, you give me a questionnaire, I do the evaluation, done. Right? So my fault was that I was imposing my style of learning to them, when for them, having to type something in the chat box every 2 or 3 minutes was irritating. For them, it was an extra work. For them, they felt too old to do it because it felt like they were doing parlor games with me. Okay? And so I learned that better, that you have to adjust. You have to be different. You have to be a chameleon, right? Of course, I'm doing this session now with a lot of these activities because I know your profile. And that's also because I had to study your profile.